Good morning. We're on to Paper Towns Part 3, and if it feels as if we're rushing through this book, we probably are. And in fact, we are probably going to be rushing through all of the books or give the appearance of rushing through all of the books. I have designed this class as a survey of various kinds of adolescent literature or young adult novels, and this takes care of sort of some realism, I believe, although we can keep having that discussion about what's real and what isn't. And it also takes care of the detective story. This did win an Edgar. There is the mystery of where did Margot go. There is an effort by Q to be the detective who solves all of this, and he does use a lot of logic along with the help of his friends and their technical expertise or their just ability to say stupid stuff at the right time. And so it covers that. So we're going to run through this quickly, and then we are going to move on to the memoir, and then to Holes, which is sort of a classic, and it's also for younger elementary students. And we're going to try to give a survey of what this is all, what adolescent literature is all about. First thing I want to talk about is the idea of mirrors and windows. And that is indeed my arm in the mirror. I came across the quotation from Sidney J. Harris a long time ago, and a very nice woman uh, made the calligraphy and taped it to a mirror and gave it to me, and it was hanging in my classroom for a while, and now it's kind of hanging on the mantle in our house. And taking a picture in a mirror is kind of difficult to keep yourself out of it. But on pages 180, 98 to 99, pages 202, and pages 215 and 16, we see this quotation or a version of this quotation come into play. Now, you'll notice that the Sidney J. Harris thing might be a little different than the one in the book. And I don't know if Green was thinking about this quotation or if he was just doing a different version of mirrors and windows. But anyway, if you look at the quotation as I have it, most people are mirrors reflecting the moods and emotions of the time. Some people are windows bringing light to bear in the dark corners where troubles fester. The whole purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. And again, please remember that one of the purposes of these books is education. They are supposed to be didactic, they are supposed to teach. Now, one can argue how effective they are. One can argue that perhaps what they're teaching is not helpful, but I think we'll move that this is an educational effort or that Green is making an educational effort. If you take a look at the quotation that begins it all, Q's dad talks about that humans lack good mirrors. It's hard for anyone to show us how we look. It's been a long time since I took a sociology class, but in the last one of the things I remember from sociology class was the idea of the looking glass self, that we tend to act as though or act in a way that we believe other people see us. And if people are showing us that this is how we're supposed to act, and they are not accurate reflections, they are not accurate mirrors, then certainly it is a difficult thing. Also, our consciousness makes for a poor window. I don't think we get the idea of understanding ourselves by because we can't let in enough light. Okay? I think it's important here that the mother has set down something that forms the core of an epiphany for Q. We idealize people as gods, we dismiss them as animals, we don't necessarily see them as human beings. And it's important, I think, in this novel to understand that one of the things Q gets to, one point he gets to, is that he understands people as human. He understands people as human, not as a miracle and not as an animal, but as human. This slide points that out. Margot was not a miracle. She was not a fine and precious thing. She was a girl. And I have to work on my typing skills because Nat and not are not the same thing. Chuck Parson is a person. He is not an animal. He is not something else. Um, he is a person. And this is, I think, the basis of an epiphany that starts running things through the novel. And we're going to get to part 4, where there's going to be a a whole other epiphany. We don't suffer from this shortage of metaphors, but for right now, we're just going to take a look at the idea that, people should be treated like people. They are not miracles, they are not gods, they are not animals. And the idea is to reflect that to them and to be light that shines that fact into them. Both of those things, I think, are essential. As we were going through the novel, page 202, we had a Margot for each of us, each more mirror than window. And here I think this is the Sidney J. Harris quotation. It's reflecting what we see the character as, not bringing light to the character. Okay? And I think this quote about listening is important. At some point during this semester, I'm going to make you listen to a 2-minute clip or so that just begins with this idea of listening is hard. And I think this quote about listening is just a wonderful quote. It's one of the things that makes the book worth reading for me. The idea of, you know, listening exposes you more than it exposes the people you're trying to listen to. It makes you suck in a little bit of who they are, and if you're honest, it probably forces you to try to reflect back to them accurately or to bring some light to their situation. Listening is a two-way street. I think also there's sometimes just some really blunt things in here. I talked earlier about a novel being didactic, and I think that here you see that didactic nature. Just chill the hell out. Stop thinking everybody should be the same. Stop thinking that everybody who disagrees with you is somehow vile and evil. Start understanding that disagreement with you, even about beliefs that you hold strongly, is not a sign of disrespect or hate or anything else. Just chill the hell out. It's a blunt thing, but I think it's one of the things that Green is putting in the novel. It's one of the things that's a step to helping Q grow. And part of this novel, as a Bildungsroman, is the growth of the character Q as he goes on this quest to find Margot Roth Spiegelman, as he tries to solve the mystery of Margot Roth Spiegelman. And as we said earlier, he is trying very, very hard to understand that she is a girl. She is not a miracle. But at this point, I think he is perhaps, and you can argue with me in class about this one, he is perhaps treating her too much like a mystery still and not like a full human being. That's an arguable point, but I think it's something worth thinking about. In addition to mirrors and windows, we talked a little bit about Melville and Moby Dick last class. I think there's this hidden little thing with Dr. Holden. And we'll get to that a little bit. But she makes the point of, you can argue that Ahab is a fool for being obsessed. You can argue that there's something tragically heroic about fighting this battle he's doomed to lose. And you'll notice that Q decides that Ahab is the hero. Remember in class and last presentation, we talked about the idea that Ahab is obsessed, that everything about Ahab is an obsession. And I think at some point, Q deciding that Ahab is a hero is going to be this idea of, he is going to fight the battle, he is doomed to lose. He is not going to get the girl. If you want to look at this novel as a tragedy because he's not going to get the girl, I think you can see that right here. He's not going to get the girl. I think there are a couple of things, though, where I disagree with Dr. Holden, and we'll come back to who she is later on this presentation or in the next one. This quotation comes from Arthur Miller. Arthur Miller wrote Death of a Salesman. He wrote a lot of other plays. And he has this quote about, there's a misconception that tragedy is allied with pessimism. And he points out that the tragic hero is intent upon claiming his whole due as a personality. and that the struggle must be total and without reservation. And it is about the indestructible will of man or humanity to achieve that sense of being human. Because of that, there is the possibility of victory. There must be a possibility of victory. Dr. Holden says he is doomed to lose it. If he is doomed to lose it, there is no hope of victory. It is she's calling it tragedy. Miller argues that that might be pathetic because he is fighting a battle he cannot possibly have won. And the character is witless, insensitive, and incapable of grappling with the superior force. I don't know if that's true for Q. We are seeing him grow. We might argue it's true for Ahab, but there were always spots where Ahab could have stopped and where Ahab had a chance to win. And in this case, the winning would have been stopping. I think Miller's gives us another point of view. The Tragedy in the Common Man is an essay. You can Google it. It is readily available. And I think it's important to take this look where how doomed are people? And in the 21st century, is it more a chance of, is it more of an effort to claim one's humanity and have a chance at victory? Perhaps the Greeks, it was always doomed. And I think this is a long conversation that I don't want to bore you to death during the slide presentation here. But I do think it's something to think about. Does Q have a chance? Does he have a chance to win? Is he asserting his humanity? Does Margot have a chance? Does she have a chance to win? Is she asserting her humanity? And I think it's not always doomed. Now we know that Q is going to go on the road trip. We know that Q is going to go chase Margot. We know that she is this mystery. She is this white whale for him because he decided that Ahab was a hero. That bit of foreshadowing sets up the whole last part of the novel. I do think it kind of telegraphs what's going to happen, perhaps a little bit heavy handed, but it telegraphs what's going to happen. I don't know whether it's tragic, and that's where I think the Arthur Miller thing versus the Dr. Holden viewpoint is important. As I said, Dr. Holden, Holden Caulfield, and I'll just give you a quick reminder, Holden Caulfield, and I didn't have my book, so I stole this off of one of the quotation pages. I don't care if it's a sad goodbye or a bad goodbye, but when I leave a place, I like to know I'm leaving it. If you don't, uh, you feel even worse. I think there's some similarities between Q saying it's so hard to leave until you leave, and then it's the easiest thing in the world. There's some similarities in the quotation. I think Dr. Holden Caulfield, I think Q echoing some of the same things about goodbyes and leaving. Pretty sure Green was trying to get us to think of Catcher in the Rye. I want to talk about the heroic quest more, much, much more in the next presentation. However, I do think it's important to set up here the fact that he is engaging in one of the key elements of the heroic quest. He is deep in the dark basement. He is in the dark. He has descended into darkness. He's by himself. And the archetypal critic will point to things like this as essential to the coming of age novel, as essential to the idea of what it takes to be a hero. And there's this overlap between the Bildungsroman and the coming of age novel. And we'll go through a bunch more of those next presentation. But this one I wanted to get to right here, and I'll probably repeat it next time as well. And then finally, I want to just, again, talk about the idea of accuracy. Q, as a narrator, may or may not be giving us the full story. I had an interesting email about that, and it is something to think about. However, this is a very, very accurate comment, and I think there are other pretty accurate comments throughout the novel. And I think it's important for us to look at this in its entirety. A lot of times we cherry pick things as we go through a book and we say that this is important or this isn't important. This is the thing we want to talk about the most. Um, in this situation, I think it's important to just take a look at this was an accurate observation. And Q is giving us a lot of accurate observations throughout the novel. Um, and whether we think it's totally realistic or not, whether we think it's taking the hyperbole of fiction or not, this quotation strikes me as something that is very, very accurate. The daily writing part will be posted um, in the Getting Started section of the blog, or excuse me, of the class homepage. And please get that done by noon. And if you have any questions, please have them ready for the start of class. If it's something more pressing, feel free to shoot me an email. Have a good rest of your day. And those of you who are watching away from class, I'll see you in class next class period.